Hello and welcome. Thank you for listening. My name is Sarah Baumert. I'm a yoga teacher, Feldenkrais practitioner, and host of the Sarah B. Yoga podcast. The Sarah B. Yoga podcast and my practice, Body Matter, is an interdisciplinary learning space where we explore the many ways that movement can help facilitate body acceptance and awareness, reduce pain and stress, regulate the nervous system, and build strength and ease. My teaching plays with the synthesis of Feldenkrais awareness through movement lessons, traditional yoga asana, creative imagery, breathing exercises, self-massage, and a compassionate mindset to help you feel a greater sense of ease and comfort in yourself. Sarah B. Yoga and Body Matter have a lot of other program offerings. These podcasts are just a taste of my teaching. Each week I teach a range of online classes, including a gentle yoga class, a level 2 class for more advanced students, and Feldenkrais classes with monthly themes, anatomy lessons, and Q&A sessions for more in-depth study. I have 2 new online series offerings for the fall. A Feldenkrais series titled Coming to Your Senses, an exploration of the spaces of the eyes, the mouth, jaw, ears, vocal and breathing apparatus. And my second course, Wakeful Body, the blending of yoga and Feldenkrais on Monday nights. As one student recently described Monday nights, that felt like I just gave myself a massage. So these fall classes will be a continuation of some fan favorite stretching sequences that incorporate bolsters and other props to enhance the poses. There is still plenty of time to join these courses live or via the course recordings. You can find more information about these offerings in the show notes. Okay, on to today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Hello, and welcome to the Sarah B. Yoga podcast. This podcast is an intersection of my yoga teaching and my training in the Feldenkrais method. For today's class, we will be utilizing a thin blanket roll to wake up spinal flexion, extension, and rotation all along the spine. This is a practice that I have been doing at the beginning of my yoga classes, so we will do that practice. It could be a practice on its own, or you could do it before you do a more vigorous yoga practice or a more full yoga practice, just to really get to know your spine. So let's begin here by rolling up the blanket. If you have a traditional yoga blanket, if it's entirely unfolded, fold it in half once and then fold it in half again. You'll have a rectangle that's a little bit longer than perhaps your spine. You'll take the long end of the rectangle and roll the blanket up from that long end so that you have a rather long and thin cylinder. Once you've done that, you can place that aside. We'll use it in a moment. And then grab one block and come down onto your back to your mat. Once you're on your back, bend your knees and stand your feet and place that block between your knees. It could be the small or the medium width between your knees, whatever feels good and allows you to have your feet and your thighs in line with each other about hips distance. You don't need to give a strong squeeze to that block. You're just gently holding it there. And bring the arms down alongside the body. Take a moment to really meet the floor. Soften any tension that you may feel in your face. Allow the lips to gently be closed without any kind of pressure or squeezing in the jaw or the teeth, so that you feel the air come in and out through the nostrils. And as you sense the air coming in and out through the nose, consciously begin to lengthen your exhalation. Not in any aggressive way, but in a way coming to the breath, listening to the breath is a way of setting an intention, of creating a moment of transition from whatever you've been doing throughout the day to being here, listening, putting other distractions away. And so you begin to elongate your exhale in a very gentle way and listening to the end of the exhalation. And if you can, pause. Take a few seconds at the end of the exhale to pause. Whatever feels comfortable for you. And in a smooth way, when you need to, begin to transition into your inhalation. So you're focusing on lengthening the exhale, pausing at the end of the exhale for an amount of time that feels very comfortable, sensing the kind of movement that's available in your abdomen, the sort of sinking sensation of the abdomen backward that you feel at the end of the exhale. And when you need to, smoothly transition to the inhale. Elongating the exhale, noticing that settling or sinking movement of the abdomen that comes just from the breath. Inhaling when you need to. At the end of that exhale, even during the pause at the end of the exhale, you may feel a subtle abdominal engagement. We're not trying to force or tense our way through trying to feel the abdominals engage. Just feeling what's already coming from the movement of your breath. Good. Now, begin to hug the block a little bit more so that you feel your inner thighs start to engage. Maintain that and begin to pull your heels towards your sitting bones. Now, curl your sitting bones a little bit upward towards the backs of your knees. Curl your pubic bone towards your navel. And during that long exhalation, feel your navel draw backward towards your back space. And with all of those actions together, you might feel that your pelvis has lightened or even started to lift a little bit. So with those actions, begin to curl your tail up as if the tail is curling towards the pubic bone, and your pubic bone is kind of running away from it. So the tail chases the pubic bone. The pubic bone wants to chase your navel. And you continue to roll up quite slowly, one vertebra at a time. And we're creating more of a hammock shape. This is not a really high bridge. The shoulder blades will stay on the floor. We're not going into that big high bridge pose, but the spine is actually more rounded. Getting the sense that there is a downhill from your knees all the way towards about the mid-back, where you feel the lowest part of the hammock is for you. You're still hugging the block. The pubic bone continues to roll towards the navel. So you may start to find a little bit of lower belly engagement. Now, feel the highest point in your spine that's off the floor. And very slowly lower that vertebra down. And as you lower it down, can you feel it imprinting or pressing into the floor? And then you move your attention down to the next vertebra. And you take that vertebra and you move it back into the floor. So each vertebra, one by one, you bring it back to the floor and give it a little bit of pressure down so you can start to discern where you can do that with ease and where that starts to become a little bit more difficult for you. You go all the way down the spine until the pelvis is on the floor. Once the pelvis is on the floor, keep the block there between your legs and take your arms straight up towards the ceiling. Interlace your fingers so that both arms stay straight, and you're creating a kind of triangle. The triangle is your two arms and then across the chest. Begin to take this triangle shape over to the right. You're continuing to squeeze the block and keeping your pelvis on the floor. So don't let your left pelvis lift. And start to bring the arms over to the right. You'll want to bend your right elbow. So let's do that for now. Let your right elbow bend so that your upper right arm is on the floor. Your left arm stays straight. And you can start to turn your chest a little bit to the right. You might be feeling a bit of a stretch across the left arm, the outer deltoids of that left arm. Great. And then bring the triangle arms back to the space right in front of you so the arms point towards the ceiling. Feel the block between the legs, keep the pelvis on the ground, and start to take the arms over to the left. When you need to, bend your left elbow, bring that left upper arm bone to the floor. Keep your right arm straight so the right arm is stretching across the body. We're just establishing an arm pattern here that we will work with once we grab our blanket. Okay, bring the arms back up towards the ceiling. And now keep the fingers interlaced, but open the palms from each other and flip the arms, flip the hands so that the palms face the ceiling. Your elbows are straight. You've turned or rotated the forearms so that your fingers stay interlaced and your palms face towards the ceiling or away from you. And begin to now reach the arms overhead, perhaps alongside the ears. Maybe the arms stay in front of the face, and pressing through the palms as you extend through the arms, seeing if you can prioritize keeping your spine neutral. It's not about getting the arms to the floor, but you feel this sense of reach through the arms as though the reaching arms create a little bit of lift or length of your ribs, like you're drawing your ribs away from your pelvis. Great. Now, bring your arms back up towards the ceiling and flip the hands so your fingers are still interlaced, but your palms are together again. We're back at that triangle position. Keep your arms pointed towards the ceiling, fingers interlaced, palms together. Hug the block and slowly start to curl the sitting bones up. Curl the tail up and start to roll away from the floor with the lower spine and the mid spine so that you're back in that hammock shape, so that you lift up to about your scapula. The scapula can stay on the floor. You're feeling the lower belly engage. Again, you're not going into a big arched bridge pose, but the tail is consistently curling up. So you feel the lower belly slightly engage. And from here, take your triangle arms to the right. If you need to bend your right elbow, let your right elbow bend. With the block between the legs, you're hugging it so that your pelvis is staying neutral. Creating any kind of twist that you can in your upper back and your ribs. Left arm is straight, reaching across the body. Good. And now bring the arms back up towards the ceiling and start to take the arms over to the left When you need to, let your left elbow bend. The left elbow can come to the floor. Your right arm stays straight as it crosses the body. The backs of the legs are engaged. Your pubic bone is still curling towards your navel. Feeling the right arm reach across. Great. Now bring the arms back up towards the ceiling. Release down one vertebrae at a time with your spine. So that highest vertebra that's lifted, push it down first. Feel like it's a rubber stamp pushing into the floor. And then the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until you're all the way down to your low back, your sacrum, and your tail. Imprinting each vertebra to the floor. And once your pelvis is on the floor, you can release your arms down. Just take a moment to rest here. And bring your arms back up towards the ceiling. Interlace the fingers again so that your arms are in this triangle shape. Your palms are facing each other. Now, without moving your pelvis, so your block can be helpful for this. Give a little squeeze into the block, keeping both sides of the pelvis heavy. Start to take your arms over to the right. Allow your right elbow to bend so that the right upper arm bone comes to the floor. And then see if you can start to straighten your right arm. And it might feel like the right hand clasped onto the left hand pulls on that left arm a little bit. Allow your head to turn to the right. You'll likely want to lift the head up and tuck the chin towards the chest as you straighten the right arm, turning your thoracic spine. So we're looking for the twist to come from the waist up. As much as you can, keep the back of your left pelvis heavy. And see if you can use your abdominals to bring your lower back, especially your lower back on the left side, backward towards the floor. Can you have both arms straight as the arms are over to the right? The head is lifted, chin is tucked. Take a strong exhalation, a long exhalation, and slowly roll across the back. Bring your arms back up towards the ceiling and start to move your arms over to the left. Let your left elbow bend. The knees hug the block a little bit. Keep the right side of the pelvis heavy. As you start to straighten the left arm so that both arms are over to the left and you're seeing if the left elbow can elongate, roll the head to the left to do that. Turn your chest. Let your ribs turn to the left. Even lift your head up, tuck your chin. Let your eyes peek between your upper arm bones. And using your exhalation, see if you can bring your lower back on the right side deeper into the floor, keeping the right side of the pelvis heavy into the floor. Great. And then bring your arms back up towards the ceiling. And again, just flip your palms so that they face the ceiling. And inhale, reach your arms overhead. Good. Bring the arms back up towards the ceiling. Release the clasp. Take your arms down. Remove the block between your legs. Okay, so we'll use that pattern here now with our blanket. So roll to your side. Grab your long, skinny cylinder. We're going to put it in 3 different spots today. We'll start with the upper back, then we'll go to the mid back, then we'll go to the lumbar, lower spine. So first you want to set up that blanket so that you can lie back and it will be across your upper back. Somewhere along your shoulder blades. Could be mid shoulder blade, could be a little bit higher. So place it across your upper back. So it's giving your chest a little bit of an opening. Now, if you have that block nearby, put it between your legs. It's just an option. And just bring your arms out to a cactus position with your elbows bent about 90 degrees. Your upper arm bones go straight out from your shoulders. The backs of your forearms, the backs of your hands are draping towards the floor. So what we're going to do here is try to wake up specific parts of the spine so that you can feel what areas like to move into flexion or extension and what areas have a harder time moving into flexion and extension. And it's hard for us to feel the areas for ourselves that don't like to move because they don't like to move. We can't actually feel them so well. So it starts to become this vicious cycle. So hopefully the blanket will be feedback that helps you discern this. So what we're going to do first is just feel where the blanket is touching your upper back right now. Because we made the blanket smaller, it's probably on 2, maybe 3 vertebrae. First, begin to press straight backward into the blanket. And you're trying to do it with that part of the spine. So isolating that part of the spine that's on the blanket. As you make the blanket heavier or move back into the blanket, try not to do it by pushing with your feet. You're not pushing your feet or your head or another part of your body that's on the floor. You're trying to change the shape of your torso. So you may do something in the front and the chest to make that blanket heavier, as if you want to move that blanket into the floor. Continue breathing as you do this. It will change the way that your breathing apparatus changes shape and adapts, but continue breathing. Great. And now just reverse that direction, meaning you start to lift away from the blanket. The muscles that are right there on the blanket, they will engage, they will contract as if you were to get lighter or lift off the blanket, so that this brings you into more spinal extension. And the trick here is to do this with the upper back and not your lower back right now. So can your lower back be kind of quiet? Even your mid back, can it be a little bit quiet? Can you concentrate the engagement right where the blanket is and feel like you're trying to create a tunnel for that blanket so that I could come and very easily slip that blanket away? Good. And now reverse directions again. Make the blanket heavier, not by pushing with your feet or pushing with your arms or somewhere else, but really finding the strength in the torso. This action of pressing back, and it's a consistent push back, making the blanket heavier and heavier. Great. And then one more time, reverse direction. So try to lift away from the blanket, engaging your upper back muscles as if you could get lighter and lighter from that blanket. Great. And release that engagement and just let your upper back spread on the blanket. Bring your arms up towards the ceiling, interlace your fingers. So you'll recognize this pattern. Gently squeeze the block and see if you can keep the pelvis even, right and left side, even weight on the floor. And take your arms over to the right. Start by letting that right elbow bend, turn your head to the right, and slowly begin to lift the head and see if you can straighten the right arm. You can tuck the chin towards the chest. The left side of the pelvis stays heavy on the floor. Rolling, rotating to the right from the waist up. Everything from the waist down can actually think of turning a little to the left to neutralize. Seeing if you can lengthen your arms, straighten that right arm, reaching through the arms over to the right. Great. And then slowly start to come back To center, bring the back of the head to the floor. Feel your arms move towards the ceiling. Notice your breath, slow exhalations. And start to move your arms over to the left. The left elbow bends to begin with. Turn the head to the left. Little hug of the block to keep the legs and the pelvis quiet. Turning, rotating from the waist up. Tuck your chin a little bit towards the chest, even lift your head to see if that allows you to straighten your left arm. Feeling the left arm on the floor, the right arm reaching across, and using your exhalation to even bring your lower back towards the floor. And then very slowly with control, roll yourself back to the middle. So your upper back and the back of the head come back to the floor and the arms point towards the ceiling. Flip the palms, open the palms, keep your fingers interlaced, but flip the arms so that your palms face the ceiling and slowly start to reach the arms overhead. And now as you reach the arms overhead, I'm going to have you press backward into the blanket. Try to make the blanket heavier as the arms reach. This may feel like a little bit of a contradiction between your shoulders and your spine. But keep pressing back into the blanket as you push through the palms. Great. And now bring your arms back up towards the ceiling, release your hands, bring your arms to the side. And take a moment to transition, roll to your side so that you can move that blanket down a little bit. So that's the pattern. We're going to do it 2 more times. The blanket will now be across your mid-back. This is where your floating ribs are. So the blanket will not be touching scapula anymore. It also will not be in the lower back lumbar curve. But it's in that space between. So set that up so that you're on your back with the blanket underneath you across your mid-back. Put the block between the legs if that seems to be helpful. Just let your arms rest on the floor. You might feel like your front lower ribs are popping a little bit forward. Just feel what that's like. This upper abdominal area right now likely feels a little bit of a stretch. And so see if you can make the blanket heavier. Push straight back into the blanket, not with your feet, not with some other part of your spine, but with the area that's touching the blanket. And here, perhaps you'll feel your upper abdominals begin to engage. Your pelvis might get a little lighter as you engage or press back into the blanket. And it's a consistent press back. It's an isometric muscular contraction as you maintain that pressure. And go on breathing. And now reverse direction so that you start to lift away from the blanket. Again, the trick here is how do you do that without creating a big arch in the lumbar spine? So can you activate these muscles right around these 1 or 2 vertebrae that are meeting the blanket that you're paying attention to? As if you want to create a little tunnel, lightening your back away from that blanket enough that I could slide the blanket out. It's just an image. Great. And one more time, reverse direction so that you press backward. As you press backward, continuing to breathe, staying easy in the face and the jaw. Feeling how the whole spine has to reshape so that you can move that blanket heavier into the floor. And one more time, reverse directions. Think of lifting away from the blanket. Notice what happens to the breathing space in the front of you. Can your breath expand more in the front of you now? Good. Let those efforts go. Keep the blanket there. Just feel the blanket support you here. Bring your arms up towards the ceiling. Interlace your fingers. Palms can be together. Begin to take your arms over to the right. Let your right elbow bend if you need to. Turn the head to the right. Begin to lift the head. Bring the chin towards the chest and straighten the right arm if you can, reaching the arms to the right. Keep the pelvis square so that the left pelvis stays heavy. And you can feel right about where you're touching the blanket on the right side of you, moving a little bit more backward into the blanket there so that you are rounding your spine within this rotation. Good. Without holding the breath, and slowly roll back onto your back. Bring your arms up towards the ceiling and start to move your arms over to the left, letting that left elbow bend at first. Roll your head to the left, lifting the weight of the head, tucking the chin towards the chest. As you do that, straighten the left arm. Find that long exhalation and see if you can bring your lower back towards the floor. Left side low back into the floor. And the twist is in the ribs, rotating to the left with the ribs. Good. And slowly bring your arms back up towards the ceiling, back of the head towards the floor. With the arms towards the ceiling, open the palms a little bit, flip the arms so that your palms face the ceiling, fingers are still interlaced. And slowly start to take your arms overhead so that you do that reach, that press of the arms. And as your arms start to reach overhead, can you press backward and make the blanket heavier? Great. Now reach your arms up, release the interlace of the fingers, take your arms down. And from here, you may be able to just lift your pelvis, take a hold of the ends of the blanket, and slide that blanket down so it's underneath your lumbar curve now. Now, our lumbar spine likes to move in this direction generally, the direction that the blanket is asking it to be in. So the sitting bones, the base of the pelvis is draped a little bit towards the floor. Feet are standing, knees are bent still. The arms can just rest. And without pushing your feet into the floor, see if you can make the blanket heavier. When you do that, it may curl your tail up a little bit so you can think about your pubic bone coming towards your navel. And hopefully, as you push into the blanket and make the blanket heavier, you're feeling some abdominal awareness or engagement that's really starting to turn on for you, some lower belly abdominal engagement. You go on breathing. Notice how the breathing apparatus adapts to this new shape of your spine and this new engagement. Good. And now reverse the direction so that your lower back gets lighter and lighter from that blanket. Again, like you're creating a little tunnel. Arching the low back here to a degree that feels okay for you. Remember, we're learning about these different areas of the spine, these different segments, and how they respond to different directions of movement. Great. Okay, reverse directions again. Make that blanket heavier. Don't push your feet into the floor to do it, but find some strength from the front of the spine, from the abdomen, to move that blanket deeper and deeper into the floor. Feel your tail curl away from the floor. Great. And one last time, reverse directions. Engage the muscles that are on the blanket as if you could lift off of it. That's right. And then just relax the lower back into the support of the blanket. And one last time with this arm pattern. Bring the arms up towards the ceiling, interlace the fingers. Begin to take your arms to the right. Turn the head to the right. Straighten the right arm, lifting the head, bringing the head between the upper arm bones like you want to peek towards your right heel. And so can you feel the ribs on your right side moving backward, making them heavier into the floor so that the left scapula, the left ribs, get lighter and lift farther from the floor so that you find a deeper turn to the right. Yeah, straightening that right arm. If the right hand is really clasped onto the left hand, it can give a little pull or reach to the left arm. Good. And slowly roll back to the middle so the arms point towards the ceiling and start to take the arms over to the left. That left elbow can start with a bend, turning your head to the left, gently lifting the chin. Bring the head between the arms as if you're looking between your upper arm bones. Start to straighten the left arm. You might be holding that block between the legs still. If you are, give it a little squeeze or just imagine that you are so that your pelvis stays even. And give more pressure into the blanket with the left low back, with your left ribs into the floor. Feel how much of a twist you can find in your upper ribs. Great. And then slowly bring the arms back to the middle, back of the head to the floor. Flip the hands so that your palms face the ceiling and begin to reach your arms overhead. As your arms reach overhead, can you push into the blanket and make it heavier? Great. Release that. Take your arms up. Release the interlace. Bring your arms down. Find the ends of the blanket. Slowly lift your pelvis so that you can slip that blanket down to the very base of your spine, the lowest part of your sacrum. From there, lift your feet from the floor. Bring your knees towards your chest. You can use the arms here. And bringing your hands to hold your knees a little bit in towards the chest. Let your knees rock a little side to side so you feel the back of the pelvis roll a little bit on the blanket. And then bring your feet back to the floor. Bring your hands to the ends of the blanket. Lift your pelvis and slide that blanket down so it's not under your pelvis anymore. You can slide it towards your feet. Bring your pelvis to the floor. And just lengthen your legs so that blanket is underneath your thighs. Let your legs flop open or roll open naturally. Bring your arms restfully on the floor, not too close to the body. And feel now how the back of your spine meets the floor. The sense of width across your upper back, the sense of width and space across your mid-back, sense of width and space across your low back. You might even feel a different kind of warmth. And let your breath come back to its natural rhythm. Listening to the end of the exhale. Inviting the slightest elongation of your exhalation. And continuing to rest here if you'd like a little bit more time to rest. Or using this as a wonderful warm-up for your spine, for any other kind of movement practice, even something you could do before you take a walk. Okay, I hope you learned something about your spine. Let me know how that was for you. If you're interested in a longer version of this practice, where I begin to incorporate how this spine attention is brought into the yoga poses, you can find a few links in the show notes to classes that begin with a similar practice and move into a more traditional asana practice. Are you enjoying this podcast? I've chosen to offer these audio recordings freely for over 15 years. I do this because research shows yoga, yoga nidra, and Feldenkrais to be valuable practices, those which I would like to share widely. Dana, the Buddhist practice of generosity, has always been a pillar of my business. And more generally, dana is the inclination to give without expecting any form of repayment. It does, however, take a fair amount of time, effort, and cost to maintain and keep the podcasts available. If you feel you've benefited from what you've learned from these classes, then please do consider making a contribution towards the maintenance and upkeep of the classes. It will help ensure that I can continue to offer the podcast classes freely and keep generating new material. Give what you can, give what feels good. If it's too little, it won't feel good. If it's too much, it won't feel good. Links to support the show monetarily can be found in the show notes. And other ways to give include sharing the podcast with others, leaving a 5-star rating and review, or just sending me an email with how the classes have affected you. Thanks so much.